Hi, and welcome to the Writing Biz. This is where we take care of the business of writing. I'm your host, Laura Williams. I'm a writer and the owner of Good Inklings, where I develop, create, and market content for clients to help them empower their brands. This episode is starting off a series that I'm really interested in. This is part one of our three-part series on book marketing, and I'm very happy to have two terrific guests with me tonight to help lead us through the basics. Shawn Manaher of Book Marketing Tools has been a guest on Indie Office Hours that I co-host with Charlotte Pierce, and this is his first appearance on the Writing Biz, so I hope it's not painful for him. And Rivka Kawano, she has been on the Writing Biz a couple of times. You may remember she, on one of her visits, she talked to us about author websites, and then she was also on a show about becoming a writerpreneur with Helen Sedgwick. And a very talented lady and very busy lady, so I'm glad that she could make time for us. I will let both of them tell them more about themselves, but first I want to say a couple of things. First, while I've handled marketing on and offline for several businesses, including a couple of my own, I've never marketed a book. I plan on doing so in a very near future. And that being said, I know that a lot of the marketing techniques that I've used in the past on other projects can be applied to book marketing. But in the book marketing world, you'll often find that the rules are different, as well as the avenues that you use to reach out to the audience that you're seeking. That's why I try to surround myself with people who know more than I do, so I can learn right along with you. Let's get started. First, Shawn, how are you doing?
I'm doing great, Laura. Thanks for having me on the show. Really appreciate it.
Wonderful. I'm thrilled to have you. I watched your season premiere of the Author Hangout yesterday, and I know you've got a lot of great things brewing. Why don't you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, real quick, for those that have not connected with us before, I'm the owner of Book Marketing Tools, where we provide tools, education, and community to help authors market their books better. And there's a number of ways in which we do that. Two of the highlights that I'll just talk about tonight is, number one, the Author Hangout, which is a video podcast that we do here on Google+, that we are now doing on a weekly basis. We repurpose that content from video format into a podcast called the Author Hangout. Ingenious there, I know. But that allows folks over on YouTube to connect with us, those on iTunes, Stitcher, and really gets the word out about book marketing and what we're doing. The other thing that I'd like to talk about is that we're doing is Reading Deals. It's a free and bargain book site that allows authors and readers to find free and bargain books that they're looking for, and authors a place to promote their books. So that's what I'm about, and again, I appreciate being on the show.
Oh, no problem. No problem at all. Rivka, as always, I'm glad you're here. What have you been up to since we last visited? I know you said you've been really busy, and it looks like you're going to get busier through the end of the year.
Yes, no sign of stopping, that's for sure. So I was speaking at a conference in Vegas a couple weeks ago, which I told you about, and that was a lot of fun. Had a really good time talking about social media and how to use social media. I have been doing more webinars. Again, that's something that my audience has been really asking me to do again, and I've been getting back to. So did one last week on websites, and actually going to be doing one coming up next Tuesday about how to market your book through social media without driving everyone crazy. So those are always fun. I love just every opportunity to just chat with the people I work with and clients and authors. So just all of that stuff, just staying busy, helping people market themselves and learn how to build real relationships online.
Well, that's good, because we need your help. Okay, now I have a few questions, like I told you earlier, that I'm kind of interested in. And one of the reasons I'm particularly excited about the book marketing series, like I said, is because I'm still writing, so I'm not quite ready, but I'm getting ready to get into this myself. My first question I have, kind of goes to that. When should a person start to market their book? I'm not talking about necessarily build their platform, but actually market the book as a product. Anyone?
Well, I have all kinds of things.
Go right ahead. Yeah.
Well, first of all, I kind of would address the question and say that separating building your platform from marketing the book is kind of I don't even know that I would go down that road. Like, when you're building your platform, you are marketing your book, and a lot of people, I think that's where they get stuck, because they have this perception that I'm selling now and I have to sell. And platform building, if you do that really, really well, your selling should be minimal in the first place. So that would be the first thing that I would jump on there and say. And the other thing is there are stages of the whole process. There is the stage where it's just audience building. I think we talked about before, Laura, when I was on the show, as soon as you know you even want to write a book, you should be building that platform. You should be connecting with people. You should be finding those ideal readers. So that's kind of phase one, is this whole pre-writing, during the writing phase. But as you're writing, that's a great time to identify those key supporters, those people that are going to be really excited about what you're doing, the people that are going to be the front runners of leaving reviews for you and inviting you on their podcasts and on their blogs and all of those kinds of things, which are so critical. And then there's the pre-launch phase, which I would still consider part of that marketing your actual book, that phase when your book is done or very close to being done, you have a solid release date, when you can start making pre-orders and pre-sales. And there's lots of ways that you can incentivize people to purchase one or even more books during that pre-sales period. That can be really, really critical for your long-term success, because it allows you to have that kind of flood of early orders when you actually launch and when you actually release, that sends all of those important signals to Amazon and everything like that. My cat, of course, has to come say hello.
That's fun. I'll probably see mine too before this is over with.
Yeah. So that would be the big thing. I would say, don't try to separate marketing from platform building. It's all a part of the same puzzle, two pieces of the same puzzle. And then, think about the different phases of your marketing. That early stage, early adopters, the pre-orders, and then the launch itself, of course, is a very intensive time period where you need to clear everything from your schedule for the month your book launches as much as humanly possible, so that you can focus all of your attention on that. And then I think a lot of people, if they make it through all of that, which a lot of writers don't, if they make it through all of that, then it's about sustaining that marketing, which is really just more of the platform building, more introducing yourself to more people, getting them excited about what you're doing, and continuing to spread the word and not getting burned out on your own message. Remembering that even if you've said the same thing a million times, it feels like that there are probably at least 5 million people who are interested in your book who have never heard about it and never heard about you. Like 6 billion people is a lot of people in the world.
And even your regular audience, they don't ever, you might think they do, but they're not exposed to every piece of content that you put out there. So that's a real important thing I kind of had to get in my head, is because I felt sometimes like I was inundating with certain things, but then I realized that doesn't mean that every time they go onto their Twitter feed or Facebook or anything, they're going to expose to what I'm putting out at that time of the day, especially with the way Facebook does things. So yeah, you're definitely right about that. What would you add to that, Shawn?
Yeah, I'm just going to echo and say the same thing, because what Rivka said is absolutely right, and certainly I can appreciate the question, but if we separate the author platform building and marketing, we miss a big part of the whole equation, in that it all is tied together. And one of the big pieces, if we can go in the weeds a little bit, that I think a lot of authors miss, and that I hammer home all the time, is knowing what the writer's avatar is, knowing what the persona for the ideal person that they really want to write for, and who ultimately is going to buy that book. And that avatar is so important. Even if you spend early on 5 hours, 8 hours of time to really understand who that avatar is, that's going to help set you up so that when you're wondering where you should go post content, what forums you should be on, what blogs you should be connected with, what your message really should be. If you really nail down that avatar, you're going to save yourself a lot of pain, trial, and heartache, because you've taken time to not just do like a demographic study and say, well, females between the age of 25 and 65. Well, there's a lot of people in the middle of that if you're really marketing to those people and you're trying to do a message to all of them, very few messages can hit home to that broad of a target market. So you really need to drill down as to who is it, what do they look like. Even if you go through the entire process and you name the person of that avatar, that this is the person that I am writing for, and what that does in terms of writing is very powerful. But in terms of marketing, you have a clear picture from you as the author side, and then when that gets communicated, it's like when you meet somebody for the first time and they just get you. You're like, oh man, it just feels so relaxed. I could just be myself. So that's what you're trying to pull. That's what you're trying to do with the marketing. So it's not so much like you're butting heads with somebody all the time and you get those comments like, I'm not really interested in this, so stop emailing me.
Yeah, see, I couldn't agree more with both of you. It's an ongoing process from the very beginning, and like you said, sometimes it doesn't feel that way. It really is. And the thing about the avatar, as a writer, especially I do a lot of writing for businesses and things like that, those avatars have been really important to me for different projects. And the reason is because that's where I find the voice for that brand, for whatever I'm working on, is by establishing that, knowing exactly who I'm talking to. Because I in the business I'm in, I can't write the same for every different client that I have. And I think it's the same when you're trying to look at your audience. You may write different things. You may write nonfiction books and fiction books and everything, and you really have to kind of develop what you're trying to do and how you're going to get your message out. So I saw that, Rivka. But yeah, it's I think that's an extremely important point, is to have a really, really good, solid avatar that you can turn to. And it also helps you, too, when you hit those pitfalls where you're not sure what direction to go into, is to go back and reevaluate that and make sure you kind of stay in on message. So
absolutely.
I absolutely agree with that. Cool. Now, if you didn't have the time, money, or for whatever reasons you weren't able to get out and go to as many local events or travel as much as you would like, go to the different conferences, et cetera, that you would normally try to do when you're marketing a book, do you think that it's possible to stick to just online marketing for your book? Do you think that that's a recipe for success, or?
Yeah, absolutely. In building out your avatar, one of the key questions that you're asking is just like you would be, and honestly, when we do the online and offline, or when you're doing the avatar, you're looking at online and offline opportunities so that you can promote your book. So it's not just a matter of, oh, I'm just going to do online or I'm just going to do offline. Do both, and look at both areas as opportunities, because if your avatar is offline, then you better be offline. If the target group that you're really trying to reach just does not hang out on social media, on Google+, well, find out where they're hanging out. So the question is offline an option, or is online an option as the only option? I think that time and time again we're seeing authors just do online, and it's working for them perfectly. It goes back to that avatar and really knowing where they're hanging out. But yeah, I think so.
Well, Rivka, do you think that would mean you'd have to, no matter what kind of marketing that you're doing, you'd have to have a really strong marketing plan, wouldn't you?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. And I completely agree with what Shawn's saying. It's really about what your target audience is and what you're doing. So I would say the biggest thing where most people fall apart online, whether it's as an author or anything, or even the personal stuff where people are like, I like you in real life, but I'm unfriending you on Facebook. It's when you have that disconnect. If you stop treating the relationships online the same way you would offline, it's going to start falling apart. So absolutely, can you have the same success? Yes. Can you market your book just online if that's necessary for whatever reason? Yes, absolutely. It's a matter of bringing the consistency, the freshness, the actual interactivity. So many people still have this idea, well, I should just be able to automate all my social media. There are lots of great things and important things to automate and ways to make you more functional. But no, this is about having a relationship with people. The people just happen to be on the other side of a computer screen. So totally agree with Shawn. Having that avatar in mind, talking to that single person when you're talking online rather than talking to just this giant nebulous group is very important and absolutely will make it happen. Also, follow through. That's another one of those real world things we know we need to do in the real world. Some reason online we think we can send one tweet or one email, and if they don't get back to us, oh well, I guess that's done. All of this stuff plays a big part. Now, having said all of that, as much as I obviously love social media and am a huge proponent of marketing online, part of the question was, what if there's not the money or the resources to travel and do stuff in person? And I would say there are those cases where someone is homebound for medical reasons or something like that, where they really can't get out. Fine. But if money is the biggest thing, there are tons of free networking events, free things you can go to, or even starting your own. Just call your local bookstores and see where you can get in to do a reading. And those things go hand in hand very, very well with your online efforts. They can both boost each other. And so, like I said, as much as I love online stuff and believe absolutely that can be the key to your success, I would also caution people from just kind of any opportunity, whether it be offline opportunities or other things online, saying, oh, well, I just don't have the money or I just don't have the resources. There are often creative, outside of the box ways to do things to make it happen.
And one of the things I would...
Go
ahead.
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
No, one of the things I would jump in there and say about online is there maybe is this thought that by being online you can shortcut things. You can shortcut engagement. You can shortcut being meaningful. You can shortcut the value of the content that you're putting out there because, well, it's just on a social media platform. I recently changed my thinking about social media platforms in where I think I was treating each platform unique. I'm starting to think of it this way, that if Google Plus was my only platform, how would I engage and what would I write on it? So what that did for me over the last 30, 45 days, it caused me to think, okay, if I'm going to engage on this platform as if it's the only platform that I had, then I'm going to write more meaningful content. My content is going to be, for me anyway, it's going to be longer form. For me, it's going to be engaging in the comments even more so than I did before. And I can tell you, it has had tremendous impact in terms of result by way of I'm a numbers guy. So I've seen more +1s, more reshares, more comments on the content that I've had over the last 45 days than I have in almost the last year combined. And so it's because I changed the way I thought about it.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. I'm not going to get in a big Google Plus rant, which is really easy for me to do. But I will say that when I started on Google Plus, it demanded more of me and made me better across the board at using all my other social media. It honestly did, because it does require more. And not only that, is I could take the things out that I've spent so much time on in Google Plus and move them really freely through other avenues, and it's much better content than I was doing before. And I truly do believe that. So yeah, I understand exactly what you're saying, Shawn.
And before we get to the next question, I want to jump in on that too, and just I think you brought out another point, going a little bit different direction with that, but this idea of treating the platform as if it's the only platform you're on. And I know some people are going to immediately be thinking, I don't have time to do that. If you don't have time to seriously invest in the platforms you're on, then you need to start cutting some of them, because you're going to get better results if you are actually taking the time to build those authentic, real relationships with people on one platform or two platforms, rather than just this very surface level, I'm kind of there, but I'm not, on 6 platforms. And
I absolutely agree with that.
Those decisions are important. Yeah, very important.
Yeah, and I talk about when I'm talking to authors or clients, establish a beachhead. For those that are in the military terms, establish a beachhead within one social media platform and allow your time to be focused really strongly in that area. And you're gonna get really good at figuring out how, number one, your audience, number two, how to connect, number three, I think your content's gonna become better. But then once you've established a beachhead that says, I'm really good at social media in this platform, then if you decide to go over to Facebook, or if you started Facebook, you go over to Google Plus or Twitter, you're going to have people who already want to be connected with you because you've established yourself in one location already.
Yeah, that's a very good point. It really is. I noticed too, I don't see in Google Plus this as often as I do Facebook and Twitter, is where people just keep putting out their book. It costs this much. This is where you can find it. This is my book. This is what it is. Costs this much. They're over and over and over and over. And I don't even listen to it anymore, and that sounds terrible, but it's true. But if somebody puts together a well-thought-out post, like I don't know if, I think maybe, Shawn, you do, Gail Harris has that new book coming out, Finding Zoe. And it's a wonderful story. It's about a young girl who's deaf, and it's just a great story. But what I'm getting at is when she puts out content, it's thoughtful and meaningful. So I read it. I bought her book, and I paid attention. If she was doing the same thing where she's putting out the title of the book, it costs this much, it's on Amazon, it's about this, I would never have bought her book because I wouldn't have heard it. I wouldn't have seen it. I wouldn't have heard it because I just ignore that part of my feed. And I feel bad for writers who don't know better, but if you don't know better, learn to be better. You know?
And it isn't always the case that the writers that are really good are really the ones who should be a little bit more open about talking about their books and selling them. But they're the ones that are like, oh no, I could never do that. But really, they're the people that we want to hear from.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Well, and the thing is, I think the one thing that will help people is think about your whys as a writer. Think about what's behind, because the book is just scratching the surface. I can guarantee you there's nobody out there who's like, hey, I think that I'm going to have a book that I'm going to sell for $2.99. What should I make it about? Like, that's not the thought process, right? We have some story we want to tell, or some idea we want to share, or something really cool that we want to pass along to other people. And if you start from that place, if you start with your audience from the same place you started in your own head in your relationship with the book, they're going to connect to the book. They're going to connect to the story. They're going to connect to the ideas. And they're going to want to buy it, just like you wanted to write it. But if you start with them at the end of the journey and say, it's available for $2.99, and you just expect them to suddenly jump on board, you're kind of... You're not having that self-awareness of the process that you've gone through. And again, then we come all the way back to platform building, because the more you can bring people along on that process as it's happening, the better off you will be.
Yeah, I mean, there's just so many challenges, both online and offline, to book marketing. Barbara Sherry Rose, who's in our audience, made an interesting comment. She said, based on past best-selling books, that she's found that the greatest success comes when she's reached out and made a difference instead of making a book sale, because people feel the difference. And I think that's a very intuitive comment. And one reason I think is, I don't care if your book is about how to fix your kitchen sink. Well, that's actually solving a problem. But what I'm getting at is, you can help people with that book, whether it's fiction or nonfiction. I mean, it's either it's allowing them an opportunity to escape and get involved in a story, or maybe characters in your book are struggling with some of the same struggles they're struggling with. You know, there's all different kinds of ways, and I think that if you do, you know, write and market from your heart. I know that might sound kind of placating, and I don't mean it to be, but if you do it from your heart with good intentions, that it shows in everything that you do. You know, you'll be perceived as more engaging. People will respect your opinion better, and they'll care more about what you have to say and also why you're saying it, which will in the end lead to the payoffs that you want. So I mean, and that's personal and professional. I don't mean just, you know, the money. So I think that that's a very good point that she made. I like how she said that.
Yeah, I think making a difference, whether you're a fiction writer or a nonfiction, a lot of times people think, well, as a nonfiction writer, it's more obvious. But in many ways, people go to, well, they do. They read fiction because there's a reason. They want to escape the humdrum of life, and they want to get engrossed into something that is more unique, more interesting, a romance or a sci-fi or some horror book that really gets them into a different world. And people, I mean, we live in challenging times. We live in times where you have just economic challenges for those in the world. You live in challenging times with family, and in the book. Does make a difference in terms of people's emotional state and being able to find something that they can escape with. And so for the fiction side, that's that. For the nonfiction side, making a difference is really providing value, right? If you have a nonfiction book and you're going to throw it out there, make sure that it solves that problem that somebody has. Somebody's looking for. I know that the book that I wrote and wrote under a pen name was the purpose was out of my own frustration of being in corporate life, that I was a manager, was not fully equipped to be a manager, but they expected me to lead and do my job, but I didn't have the tools in front of me. And so when I left that job, I immediately wrote a short book about leadership to help managers with their own leadership struggle. And so it gives people an idea of, over the next 30 days, how to become a better leader. And as a new manager, that would have been a great book. And so that book continues to sell and does pretty well on Amazon. And that's simply because I believe is that it's providing value for people.
Isn't that interesting? Yeah, it's just, you know, being there and solving that problem, whether, like you said, either through nonfiction or fiction. It's you know, everything has some value if you've put a lot of effort into it. If you've really, like I said, wrote it from a deep place in yourself, it has value to somebody. So,
Absolutely.
Now let's talk about money. What would you? I know this is a very difficult question to ask because it depends on where you're going, how, you know, what type of attraction you're trying to get an audience. What about financing the marketing? I know one of those answers, but how would you think that you would come up with, or how to decide on how much money? Let's do that. Decide on how much money it's going to cost to implement your marketing plan. Would you just stop there? You have to have a marketing plan. I'm going to say that like so many times every show. You have to have plans. But yeah, once you have your plan, how do you determine the costs that are needed to implement it?
Rivka, you want to go first?
You know, this is
right under the bus.
Question. This is one of those questions. There's so much variability, first of all, because if you look at something like a children's book, for example, let's assume you're self-publishing. Let's assume you're not an artist. Let's assume that you need to hire an artist, okay? That is a completely different type of cost than you've written a novel and you just, you know, need a layout person. You don't need an illustrator. You just need layout. Because if you hire an illustrator, you still need a layout person. So you really have to sit down and I think take the time to educate yourself about the process of what goes into the book. If you're writing a book, you're going to need an editor, period. I don't care how good of a writer you are, or even if you are an editor, you still need an editor. This is just like basic neuroscience of how our brain works. We don't see our own mistakes. So you need an editor. You need an illustrator if it's an illustrated book. You need a layout person. You need a cover designer. Please, 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 please do not buy one of these like pre-created covers that like 100 other people have bought the same cover. Please just don't do that, okay? If you want your book to be taken seriously. So those are kind of like the basics that you have to even get your book on the shelf before you even get to the marketing. Now, as far as the costs for marketing, that can range hugely, hugely. A big part of it comes down to how much time are you willing to spend and do you have to spend, because there is a trade-off between time and money. You know, if you have a lot of time for whatever reason, you're retired or you're you know, your spouse works and you're able to stay home all day, or like whatever the case may be, there are a lot of ways that you can do things yourself and kind of sweat equity your book to success. But if you're working 60 hours a week and, you know, raising a family and all this other kind of stuff, and you're trying to promote a book, you're going to have to hire more of that out than you would otherwise. So it's really hard to say, you know, it's going to be this. You know, I would say at a minimum, you really need to be thinking about $3,000 to $5,000 to get a book onto the shelf. Like counting in the editor and layout person and cover designer, kind of like just as a bottom range figure to have in your head. And it can go on up from there. That being said, there are plenty of people out there who are sharks, as I call them, and who charge authors all kinds of stuff for all kinds of things that they don't necessarily need, that won't necessarily give them a return on investment, that aren't actually going to help them. And, you know, you get sucked into it because you don't understand the process. So take the time to understand the process. Know what goes into the book. Know what needs to be done, what doesn't need to be done. Maybe that's nice. Talk to other authors about who they've used, that they've liked, that they've had a good experience with, particularly people who are in the same genre, because someone who makes a great horror cover may or may not be able to make a great children's book cover. So it just, you know, take time to do your research, to ask a lot of people. Do not just go Google, you know, get my book published and buy the first $10,000 package you see.
I'll tell you the reason I asked that question is, to me, you know, a writing business is a startup business. And if you want results, you have to be willing to help get that results. And that means spending some money. That being said, there are some things maybe you can do yourself. I agree with you totally about the editing. Don't do that. But and covers probably not, unless you really are a good designer. But if you excuse me, if you really want to see good results, you have to take those steps. And if that means delaying your publication until you have the money to take those steps, delay it. Don't rush into that, oh, I finished my book, I'm going to publish it, and not have the pieces in order and expect great results. Because more than likely, you're not going to see them. You're going to get the results that you put the effort into. And that means with funding, too. If you want to get really good results, you have to pay to get a really good, solid grounding for what your project is. It's kind of like opening up a restaurant and not getting a real nice sign and throwing up a poster board with a name scribbled on it. People aren't going to want to eat there. So it's the same type of thing. You have to make that investment to really get good success.
Yeah, and the question I would throw out there is, if you are not willing to invest in your book, why would anyone else?
Very good way of putting it.
By buying it. If this thing that you care about so much, if you can't put your money into it, why do you expect any people to put their money into buying it on the other end? But I would love to hear your kind of thoughts, Shawn.
Yeah, so my perspective is I'm going to just talk about my experience, and then I'm going to look at a couple of websites and just pull in some numbers that they have to kind of give us some perspective. So from my experience, I wanted to do Amazon self-publishing because I heard it was really awesome way to get the word out there for your message, whatever it might be. And so I decided to write a book, that I talked about earlier, the 30-day leadership management course, for under a pen name Mark G. Miller, because I just really love that name. Like, I'm just going to go off on a tangent. So Mark is like a really strong name. We'll talk about pen names, right? What pen name you should have. So Mark is just a very strong name. I have a very good friend, Mark, and when I think of Mark, he's just solid, rock solid kind of guy. And then I had this professor in college. His name was Gregory Miller, and I thought, man, what a cool name. Gregory Miller just rolls off and I said, Mark G. Miller, that is just one strong name. And so from that point on, I said, that's the name of this pen name I'm going to write under. So anyways, back to the story of marketing, is that I wanted to figure it out all by myself, because I was like, you know what? I hear it's difficult to do, but I like challenges. I want to try this out. So I took probably 3 months to get the book all written with somebody helping me on that. But during that time, I was learning what the marketing process should be for my book, who my target market was. I was finding forums that I could share the book about. I was learning about free and bargain book sites and what those were about. I was learning about paid advertisements. I was learning about, where can I get cover done? Where can I get internal, get the Mobi file created? I was like, what the heck's a Mobi file? And all of that sort of stuff. And so at the end of the day, after that book has been out for 2 years, it averages probably about $150 to $250 in sales a month. I spent $400 in marketing in total. But there's a couple things to talk about there. I had resources that allowed me to spend that $400. And certainly it's not the $3,000 to $5,000 that Rivka talks about there, but it's still, what did I do? I spent a lot of time. I spent a lot of energy and effort in order to figure that stuff out so that I didn't have to spend $3,000 to $5,000. I don't know exactly the total time that I spent on it. I think from just marketing, 40, 60 hours at least on the process of marketing, not on the process of learning the marketing. And so if we kind of scale that out, it probably much more. But the good thing, so go through that whole process, figure it out yourself, $400. I think it's still doable. $400 to $1,000. I think somebody could spend that if they're doing it all by themselves. When it comes to building out a website, you're using WordPress, you're using book templates that are now out there for authors. Those are kind of plug and play. If you find a developer that could do that for like $100, $200, it's very possible to find people to do it for that price. That sort of price comes into play. Then from a marketing standpoint, setting up your social media platform, let's start with one. Let's not go crazy. Just go with one. That you can learn yourself. Ask an expert. You ask people on Google Plus how to figure out Google Plus. Ask Laura Williams. Ping her and say, Laura Williams, how do I do this Google Plus stuff? How do I do Facebook? She is more than willing to help you with it. I'd be willing to help you with that. Rivka would be willing to help you with that. So when it comes down to it, you can do it all yourself. I did it for $400. We could pause there, but I'm looking at a couple of websites that I would go to and say, okay, well, what are they charging for the services? One of those is writer.ly, so Writer Lee, and the folks over there have done a really good job at pulling together resources so that authors are able to go through the entire process of publishing and then also marketing the book. You can go to writer.ly to look at their pricing, but they have pricing costs related to design, like cover design for $500, social media branding for $250, a book marketing launch roadmap for $299. Those are those resources through Writerly. Another person I know and connected with, Jera Publishing in Atlanta. She does book editing services, book marketing services, and they fall in line really pretty much into where Rivka was talking in the 3,000 to 5,000 if you're really going to do this seriously. So I think you can do it on the cheap, but it's going to take a lot of time. But if you do have the resources, 3 to 5 does sound right when it comes to both the publishing and the marketing of the book.
Yeah, I think it comes to a couple of things. One is your skill set. You know, what or do you have a skill set to work with to kind of bring those pieces together? Yeah. And the other thing is time. How valuable is your time? Do you feel that your time's better spent doing those things or writing? And I think that's a couple of things you really need to evaluate. I just want to pause for a second and remind everybody that they're listening to the Writing Biz, and I'm your host, Laura Williams. My guests are Rivka Kawano and Shawn Manaher. For the video of this show and past episodes, you can always visit thewritingbiz.com, and you can also, if you would, please sign up for the newsletter so you'll never miss another episode. And if you're listening to podcasts, of course, you know, reviews are appreciated. There was something else I want to ask you about beta readers. I don't know if this actually has to go with marketing, but I just wanted to ask you about beta readers. To me, I think they're a good idea because they help to, a lot of time if your beta readers are well-known influencers, they can help, sorry about that, they can help you market your book when your book comes out because they've already invested an interest in it. Have either of you used beta readers before with yourself or any of the authors that you work with, or how do you feel about the success of that?
I have not, so I'll let Rivka take that one.
Yeah, no, I think beta readers are a very good idea. It does get people invested in your book, gets them interested in your book. It helps you get those initial reviews, which are super important. And as long as you set the stage for really open and honest feedback, you know, that you're not just looking for somebody to just pat you on the back all the time and say how awesome you are. It can identify some of the issues early on that will help you have a better book that's going to better reach your audience. And there are lots of different ways to do beta readers, but I think absolutely getting people involved early in the process and having them be a part of that can be a very powerful tool, for sure.
Yeah, that's kind of the thought I was having on it because I had kind of gone back and forth with the beta read idea. I am taking, I believe it's next Wednesday during the day, I'm taking a mini course of Mina Amir's on how to write a nonfiction book faster. But she's doing, you know how they do the NaNoWriMo in November for fiction authors, the National Writers Fiction Month? I probably said it wrong. She does it for nonfiction. Hers is, I don't know what that's all about. But hers is Write Nonfiction in November, and I'm not even going to give the initials because they're crazy. But I think that doing challenges like that really helps to, in my mind, it helps first of all get a better product, but also too it's another marketing thing because you're in a group with writers that are trying to do the same thing you are, so it offers more support. And I would assume, I would hope, that if you're willing to help promote them and help build them up, that they would do the same for you. So to me, it's like a whole new audience. Besides the fact that I'll learn something. I'm pretty excited about it. I mean, Nina Amir does just this great stuff anyways that, it's hard not to get excited about it.
And Laura, what I would say with that is I know that you won't do this because simply you're already out there and you're building your audience, but what I would caution authors in the communities that they frequent, that remember that authors ultimately are not your audience.
No, you're right.
As much as it is nice to have community, you just need to get out there, and you know who you need to go after is your avatar, because they may not, unless you're writing books for authors, then wow, there you go. But yeah, you really have to be careful of that because honestly, writers are not marketers. and it is very comfortable. I mean, you know this. It's very comfortable to be in a community where it's nice, safe, and secure. You feel it's cozy. You got your cup of tea every morning. Everybody, we're talking about book marketing and writing, but you never do the actual book marketing. So I would caution other authors that are listening here that they're not your audience.
On the other side of that, though, if you, at the same time, their audience may be your audience too. You know, if you both write in the same genre, let's say vampire books,
Yeah.
there aren't, I mean, there are a lot of writers that write vampire books, but it's still a pretty select group. If you are doing a symbiotic relationship with them and you're both pushing the same type of things, it can work. But no, you're absolutely right. You have to think about it. You have to, and you don't want to waste your time in places that's not getting you any traction. And that goes back to your numbers thing. I'm a numbers person too. Pay attention to your numbers. See where your growth is coming from. See who's buying your books. Look at the whys of how they're buying your books. Who's visiting your website. Who's just kind of trolling around, or who's really paying attention to what you're doing. And that, in the end, will save you a lot of time, because I would hope that the first book's not your last book. So if you want to go, you know, write the second, third, fourth, fifth book, all that information that you're gathering and paying attention to will pay off time and time again as you're trying to move the next product out there. So now I think I pretty much. Oh, you know what? I did have one other question. Online book tours versus traditional book tours. I just kind of want to hear what your takes on it. The pluses and minuses, or how well they can work together. Just kind of question again to answer. Like I said, these subjects are so broad. It's very hard to you know, get all the answers in one quick hour. So that's why I said the basics. We're just kind of get people in the right frame of mind to come up with some ideas and point them in some directions that they can go. So how do you all feel about online book tours and traditional book tours?
Yeah, I think that for the individual that is looking to, you know, they can't or they don't want to go offline and do a traditional book tour, then absolutely an online book tour is necessary. But the components are still the same. It's the theme that we've been talking throughout the evening, is that the way in which you engage offline needs to be the same way you engage online. And so the amount of time in which you can invest in that engagement process will be, in my mind, the result that you can expect from either an online or offline book tour. So if you're taking a shortcut and just buying into a service that, and there are a lot of good blog tour services that are out there, but if you take the time and do extra than just getting the blog tour where you're engaging with the blog owners if you can, then that's going to be more meaningful, because then it's not just, oh, okay, somebody else is going to be on this blog tour. They know you personally, and so if you can even create your own list of blogs that you really know that your readers are going to be on, then that's going to help you, and it's going to be more effective. I would say on the flip side, if you're going to do a blog tour, you're going to be going to places where hopefully the right readers are there, and the investment of the time that you've made with the locations, whether you know the bookstores that you're going to or the speaking engagements, where you've invested that time, you're going to get a lot more result, because it's that whole idea of give, and just don't expect anything, but by giving, it does come back to you.
Yeah, I agree with that. The interesting thing, too, is if you've taken time to build that platform online, if you're going to do an online book tour, you're going to have a much better success rate. If you just sit there and you decide, okay, I want to do an online book tour, and you haven't made any effort to get to know the people that matter in that space, the ones that you can do a guest blog post with, or become a guest on one of these shows or something like that, you're not going to get the success that you're expecting. So you really have to make sure that all that's together. Rivka, what would you like to say to that?
I would just agree completely with everything Shawn said. You know, it's about investing the time. I think sometimes when people think of online book tour, they just think about the initial introduction part of finding the blogs and then saying, hey, will you host me? And sure, I will. and then that's it. But that's not the case any more than, you know, if you were doing a physical book tour, you wouldn't say, hey, would you host me? And they say, yeah, and so then you send them some books and then, like, leave. No, I mean, you have to talk to people. You have to leave comments on the blog. You have to be mentioning them on social media and all this kind of stuff. And everything Shawn said, just agree 100%. The more you really invest into building those quality relationships and taking the time, the more results you're gonna get back. So there's a very, very direct correlation between what you put into it and what you're going to get out of it.
Rivka, can I ask a follow-up to kind of give more practical direction towards the whole engagement process? How do you encourage authors to engage in and on social media? What are some practical things that they could do?
Mm-hmm. So practically, it comes down to understanding how each individual platform works, because there's different opportunities on different platforms. You know, obviously, if somebody's hosting you on their blog, and whether they're having you write a guest post or whether they're writing a review, you should be keeping track of that. And if people make a comment, you should be responding to those comments. You know, don't just publish a guest post or have a review and then forget about it. You should be sharing that post, because when somebody writes something about you, shares something about you on their blog or in their space, and you pass it on to your followers, you get some double benefits. Number one, you're kind of giving back to this person who has kind of put their reputation on the line to promote you. You're giving them exposure and credibility, so they're going to be more likely to do that again in the future, and they're going to be more likely to promote you more heavily. And you're also ingratiating yourself to your own audience, because people love when they see somebody else saying something good about you. So if somebody does a review, you're saying, oh, wow, this other third independent party like this book. This isn't just the author saying it. So it's one of those kind of sneaky ways to promote without people really feeling like you're promoting, because you're saying, oh, thank you so much for featuring my book on your blog. This is awesome. And you're really promoting your book as much as you are promoting the blog. So that would be one thing. Same thing with Twitter. You know, if somebody does a review or something and tweets about it, retweet it, thank them for it. So it's just utilizing those tools that are in each platform to start discussions, to have discussions, to be present, and paying attention to those little details.
Yeah, I thought that was really cool, because you talked about some things that I thought, in my mind, they're basic, right? They're kind of like engagement 101. But the reality is somebody asked me this the other day. They said, so Shawn, what are the high-profile authors doing? You know, I'm new. I'm just a newbie. What are high-profile authors doing? And when I thought of a response, it was like, it's the same thing that Laura would be talking about. It'd be the same thing that you'd be talking about. You know, whether you're a new author or somebody that's been established, it's the same stuff. It's just the difference of whether or not you do it or not, and how effective you are at doing it. It, in my mind, makes the difference. I don't know.
And how committed.
Yeah.
I think the commitment is, and you know, being consistent is such a huge part of any of this. It really is. I mean, if you can learn all the tools and all the tricks, but if you aren't committed to doing it and doing it repeatedly, then you're going to end up with some problems. I'm going to go ahead and close the show out, but before I do that, of course I want you to follow the Writing Biz, but I want whoever's listening, watches this show, to really consider following Rivka and Shawn. They put out a lot of great information that can truly help you not only be better at the marketing, but to be a better writer and to learn how to use the different tools that are available to you and the information that's available to you to make your business better. They both offer a lot in that respect. I want to thank you both for joining us. Shawn, before we go, could you tell us a little bit more about what Book Marketing Tools is, so that people can see how that program can actually help them with their book marketing?
Yep, sounds good. And thanks again, Laura. This was a lot of fun. And I think I found a new book marketing friend and Rivka. It's like we're on the same wavelength when it comes to that. So it's really great to be on the show with you, Rivka. So book marketing tools, tools, education, and community to help authors market their books better. And what we early on built out were a couple of tools. Number one was a tool to help authors with the free promotions that they do on Amazon. And so Amazon, through their KDP Select program, allow you 5 free days every 90 days so that you can promote your book for free to your audience or to anybody on Amazon. And so we created a tool to make it much easier for authors to figure out, number one, where to post their free books, and number two, it takes a lot of time. If you've manually done a free promotion on Amazon, literally takes hours and hours to do. So we created a tool so it literally takes you 10 minutes. So you put your information in once and you click through each of the locations, and we have over 30 sites on it right now that you can click, and you're done in 10 minutes. It's really, really fast, very helpful. We also have a lesser-known tool, which is more of a dashboard to help you track the stats. Before Amazon pulled together the stats dashboard that they have, we created a tool to help you track that. In that, we track the sales ranking, we track keywords, we track a number of things so that you can determine. So let's say you do a PR web campaign or a press release campaign, and you want to know the effectiveness of that campaign. Well, in our dashboard, you can actually track when you put that campaign out, and it'll give you a 2-week look before and after that book has been launched to determine whether or not that was effective. That's very helpful for authors that have a lot of books and have resources to do a number of campaigns at the same time. So beyond that, book marketing tools, I would love for folks, if it's okay for me to share the Ultimate Author Checklist.
Sure.
If you go to bookmarketingtools.com/free guide, you're going to get and fill out the form there. You're going to get a free Ultimate Author Checklist that just gives you a high level with some detail as to what's the plan that you need in order to market your book. So thanks. That's everything.
Yeah, if you want to put that in the comment feed too, you're more than welcome to.
Thank you.
And Rivka, why don't you tell us a little bit about Author Sensei and the services that you offer?
Yeah, absolutely. First of all, again, thanks for having me on again, Laura. It's always fun, and I agree, Shawn. I think we're going to be buddies. Well, I love connecting with other people that have a similar mindset and mentality about marketing, so that's awesome. So AuthorSensei.com is a great place. I've got a free, actually a whole free webinar series on that main page talking to best-selling authors about what they've done to market their books successfully. And then if you go to the free training link, that's where you can sign up for my webinars. Like I said, next week we kind of touched on it a tiny bit today as far as this whole how do you not go around and say buy my book, buy my book, buy my book all day long. But I'm going to be doing a full webinar just exclusively on that, how to promote your book without driving people nuts on social media. So I'd love for anybody who is listening to come join that webinar. We're going to have a lot of fun. It's totally free. Just going to be talking to you about how to make that all work together for you. So, and like Laura said, do hit people up. Like if you send me a tweet, either at Author Sensei or on my personal account at Rivka K, and just ask me a quick question, I'm always more than happy to respond. A lot of times we miss out because we aren't taking the time to ask or just reach out to the resources that are out there. So thanks again, and I'm so excited that we had such a good time.
No problem. This is I really think there's a lot of good information that we have touched on in this, and this is part 1 of the 3-part series on book marketing. Next week we're going to be talking about book marketing on your own turf with Stephen Porter and Rochelle Carter. That's going to be a real interesting show, and it's just kind of give you some ideas of how you can market locally within your state, nationally, or whatever, but not necessarily online. There may be some online components, but a lot of it is, just beating the sidewalk. Thank you for joining us for this week's episode of The Writing Biz. You can find past episodes on thewritingbiz.com. I will also put out a blog post usually in the next couple of days that any resources that we mentioned, and plus additional ones will all be compiled along with the video itself, so you can watch it at your leisure or save it if you'd like to. You also have access to that if you join the Writing Biz newsletter, which also has even more resources on top of that. I try to make sure that it's a valuable thing for you, or why would you want to get it? Now, the Writing Biz also, you can listen to it on the Stitcher Radio and iTunes. And I want to thank you both so much for joining us. I really appreciate it. I think that my audience is going to be very happy with the information that they're receiving. And, you know, book marketing is such a, there's so many variations to it. It can be so confusing that it's really important to listen to people who know what they're doing. And the information and advice that you've given is priceless, so I appreciate that. Thank you very much for that. I want to thank everybody for watching and listening, and I will see you again next week. Thank you.